Hello and welcome to this Red Gaming Tech video. Myself and Marta. I hope you guys haven't missed me too much. I was away for a couple of days in London. I'm also going to be away this weekend as well, so, enjoy me while I'm here, my friends. But I've got a bit of a mix for you today. I've got a little bit of tech news, but primarily this is going to be a gaming-focused video, and we're going to start off with those silly comments from EA. So, you may or may not have seen this. It has been doing the rounds on social media because these comments are, well, they're EA level silly, but we'll get to that. So, what actually happened was the Vice President of Legal and Government Affairs at EA appeared before the UK House of Commons Committee Wednesday, just gone. And they were asked by a Member of Parliament who if they had any quote-unquote ethical qualms about loot boxes. And they went on to say some comments that were, in my personal opinion, the same level of idiocy as when they said it's all about that sense of pride and accomplishment. So, he went on to compare loot boxes to things like Kinder Eggs and Hatchimals, and she said, quote, "People like surprises. We do think the way we've implemented these kinds of mechanics is quite ethical and quite fun. They aren't gambling, and we disagree that there's evidence that shows they lead to gambling." And they also went on to call loot boxes quote-unquote surprise mechanics, and she also argued that their use in EA games is quote, "quite ethical and quite fun and enjoyable to people." Now, long-time viewers of this channel will know my opinions on loot boxes. While games like Overwatch have done them not as bad in terms of the fact that it's just cosmetic, there aren't items that benefit you at all in-game, you just look cool, which is, it's lesser of the evils, but it's still, loot boxes. I do agree that loot boxes are gambling. At the end of the day, it's the exact same thing as putting a pound in the fruit machine, pressing the button, the shiny things happen, and oh look, I've just won £5. Okay, the loot boxes may not have a exact monetary value within the game itself, but it's still hitting that same part of your brain, as I've said many times. And if you put in a pound and you don't get anything, it's the same as when you buy a loot box and you don't get the skin that you want. I would actually be perfectly fine with a game like Overwatch, just to give an example, allowing you to just buy the skins or whatever it is, even the voice lines and the intros and play of the game stuff, just for a flat fee of like a couple of bucks or whatever it is they wanted to charge. But the point is, especially for young children, it's hitting that same part of their brain that gets you in that addictive feedback loop. There's a reason that these mechanics exist so prevalently in mobile games, and some of them are really, really predatory, especially the ones that are targeted towards children who may not even understand that they're spending real money on their parents' debit card or whatever. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of discussion around loot boxes. Belgium and the Netherlands have found that loot boxes are a form of gambling, and we are seeing them examined in countries like the UK, and obviously they've already been banned in Belgium and a few other places as well. Now, I don't really want them being banned per se. I don't want them in games that are targeted towards kids, because that is just straight up predatory. I think if they're going to be in games that are targeted towards adults, that's fine, as long as there's some sort of warning. And I think a percentage of the chance of getting X, Y, and Z would be helpful, just to know that you've only got like a 2% chance of getting that really cool Diva skin that you want. Just so people are informed. It's informed consent. But back to the point at hand, I just think these comments from EA are rather silly. Obviously, they have to defend themselves to the Parliament. They're not exactly going to throw their hands up and be like, "Oh, you got me, guys." But yeah, if that's the best they could come up with, then yikes. But let's move on from that, guys. I've ranted about that for long enough. Let's talk about some comments from Ubisoft over the next generation console, which of course we've been talking about an awful lot lately. So these comments were made by the Ubisoft Executive Director for EMEA Territories, Elaine Kaur, by The Telegraph during E3. And the full interview is going to be linked in the description below this video. They talk about quite a few subjects, as you can quite rightly expect. There's a bunch of questions that I'm not even going to touch on here. But one of the things they did discuss was the upcoming next-gen consoles by both Microsoft and Sony. And he said, quote, "I don't know. I really don't know. We don't know what the fans will want. We don't know how streaming will increase. What we do know is that the next generation consoles which have been announced are a really major leap from the current generation, and for us creators, it is fantastic because we've always been very excited in trying to capture the cutting edge of what technology can offer. Developers want to surprise all the time, to innovate, and technology allows us to go into unknown territories and bring something fresh. Like in Watch Dogs, for example. Thanks to the AI that they are mastering now, we're able to bring new gameplay. And if the manufacturers of this world can go innovating and pushing the boundaries of technologies, then we'll be able to create better games and convince more fans, and the industry will go on growing. The new technologies will provide new ways for fans to exchange data, and there are plenty of other new elements to improve the quality of gaming. Microsoft spoke about SSD and the fact that they want to reduce loading times, which we like very much because we're players too. It's a very important topic and it's a revolution, it's this thing. On the graphics side, it's still improving because you will see a difference from 4K to 8K. There are these things they're proposing that will make the machine super sexy for the fans to look forward to. Now, those comments are definitely interesting because I kind of want to call them back to some kind of different comments made by the head of Platinum Games, where they expressed that it's hard to get excited about the PS5 and Xbox Scarlett. And they spoke to the Video Games Chronicle, and these comments were made by the head producer Atsushi Inaba. And he said, quote, "It's okay, and by that I mean I'm sure that things will move faster, graphics will be better, and maybe it'll be easier with less wait times. That's good for the consumer. But it's more of the same, quite frankly, compared to previous generations. It's nothing disruptive or super innovative if you ask me. Game hardware used to be about custom chips that you couldn't do on PCs. Now you look at it, and they're just grabbing stuff that already exists. The Switch, for example, is a Tegra, which already existed, and the other consoles are using very similar chips and graphics cards to what you see on PCs, but maybe slightly updated. None of it seems unique to that hardware anymore. It's hard to get excited about that stuff that kind of already exists, but it has been repurposed to a certain degree." Now, I will say, those two comments are very, very different, and obviously Ubisofts Response was much more positive, but also much more the sort of response you would expect from an executive. I mean, just looking at the specs we know about for the PS5, and obviously the things we've heard about the Scarlett, they both look very, very impressive. A huge leap in terms of raw specs. Now, personally, I really don't want them to focus too much on this whole 8K nonsense. I would rather focus on them bringing 60 FPS, but if we're making the jump to 8K already, we're probably going to get 60 FPS, just as an aside, which is great, fantastic. If that's the case, happy. Thumbs up. I kind of see where Inaba's coming from, but at the same time, you can't really blame the developers of the consoles for doing exactly that, because the best hardware is in the PC space, and the people who are making those pieces of hardware are from the PC area. And yes, they are taking things like Navi and Zen and all this and tweaking it for the consoles, but it is still based upon those things that already exist, but they are going to be custom. And you can't really blame them, that being Microsoft and Sony, for going for what they believe is the best. Yes, they could have like a unique thing that's just made for them, but Sony's tried that before with the PS3, and it didn't really work out in their favour, to be fair. So I think going for a more PC-like architecture actually makes sense. It makes their life easier in terms of any backwards compatibility they choose to do in the future, and of course it makes the job easier to port the games over, you know, any cross-platform nonsense they want to do, that sort of thing. It just makes the life easier for developers, and of course for the publishers in the future if they decide to do backwards compatibility. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Now, which out of those two comments, those very different comments, do you actually side with? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So next up, we've got a bit of a leak for Diablo Fall. And yes, I did say Diablo 4 because of quite infamously they showed Diablo Immortal at BlizzCon last year, and yeah, it didn't exactly go down well now, did it? Now, this was recently mentioned, that being Diablo 4, in a recent article by the French news publication Le Monde, and they actually mentioned Diablo 4 as a side note to a different story about Blizzard layoffs. So there is a French excerpt which has been roughly translated by segmentnext.com. You'll find a link to their article in the description below this video, so if you do actually speak French, you can see the original comment there, and if they've mistranslated it, please do let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what it does actually say if they are incorrect. Anyway, they said, quote, "What about the future? The Blizzard Entertainment teams have already had the right to a presentation of the highly anticipated Diablo 4, and we know that a new Overwatch is in the pipes, but none will come out for 2020 at best, and the employees of Versailles do not know if they will see the colour. Activision Blizzard will make less money, but still make a lot of money." So we could see something at BlizzCon 2019, and I think Blizzard would be keen to kind of rescue the Diablo name from the pits of oblivion, because Lord knows a lot of people have wash their hands of Blizzard and Diablo, because obviously Diablo 3, when it launched initially, was a mess, and it's much better now, like so much better. It's actually unreal how much it's improved, but obviously that doesn't change how it how it released, should I say. Doesn't change the real money auction. None of that stuff they did at the start has been erased just because they fixed it. Obviously, we shouldn't hold that against them, but we should just keep it in mind. But look, Diablo 3 wasn't great at the start. Better now, but still. And then Diablo Immortal was a thing, and they just seem to have completely lost touch with what gamers actually want, and have been too influenced by a bunch of shareholders and executives in suits. At least that's how it seems to me. You know, I'm not there, I'm not at Blizzard office, I'm just saying that's how it appears to be from the decisions that they've been making with Overwatch as well. I have to say, I've stopped playing that game. I mean, I enjoyed it a lot, I did play it for over 100 hours, so, you know, I'm not saying it's a bad game, because it's not, but I've just kind of gotten burned out on it, to be honest. And now Overwatch, I don't know. They seem to be doing alright with the initial one. I mean, obviously it is dying a little bit in popularity, especially on the esports scene. I don't know what Overwatch 2 can even bring to the table, unless it is a single-player campaign, which I would actually be okay with. That would actually be really, really cool. But it's tough to say how accurate that one is. I would say Diablo 4 is quite likely. But to Overwatch 2, I don't know, I'm sceptical. Let me know your thoughts, guys. But we have one more topic to discuss, then we are going to end with the tech topic for today, which is actually a Ryzen 5 3600 benchmark. And this is a Geekbench Benchmark, sounds weird to say, which was posted on the r/AMD subreddit. So you will find a link to that Reddit thread in the description below this video. But let's talk about what this benchmark shows and what it actually tells us. So we see a single core score of 5716 and a multi-core score of 29990. Now, what makes this benchmark even more interesting is the memory speed shown in the benchmark. It's 3734, which is actually the highest speed you can run with Ryzen 3000 with a 1-to-1 ratio with Infinity Fabric. If you go any higher, which is possible, you would be hitting a divider with Infinity Fabric. So, again, it is possible to go over that quote-unquote limit, but you would be running into issues. So this is the fastest you can go without running into that Infinity Fabric problem. Still though, very, very impressive results, and again with that really fast memory speed. So, some very helpful Redditors in the comments of this thread actually post some information about how this CPU actually does versus the 8086K, and another Redditor did it versus the 8700. Now, the 8700 here in the comparison I'm about to do is running at stock, so do keep that in mind. We see the scores we saw with the Ryzen 5, and then for the 8700 we see a single core of 5889, and then multi-core of 26139, and then for the 8086K we do see it slightly beating, I do mean slightly, the Ryzen 5, with a single core score of 6533, and then a multi-core score of 29866. Still though, very, very impressive. The chart for the 8700K was by the Cat of War, and then the ones for the other was from Hurricane71. So thank you for those two for posting those in the comments in the Reddit thread, which is linked in the description below this video. Still, I'm impressed, but let me know your thoughts, guys. You've heard me talk for almost 14 minutes, probably a bit short of you guys once I cut out all the awkward pauses. But anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.